You just said Iran, you'd be surprised if they have a month left. In a month, when this government is still standing, you will move the goalpost to something else. This is what you guys do through all of these wars. They did it for 20 years in Afghanistan. The government that we're building up is doing great.
This is why this whole,
I know, that's why I'm saying you can keep it going.
Dave Smith, there's another way of looking at this, which is that if it does take 6 months or a year, then in warfare terms, that still would remain a reasonably short amount of time. And if the upshot of it is that the regime does get toppled and the people do get their country back and the enriched uranium does get handed over, and there's a lot of big ifs in this sentence, but if all these things do end up happening and the Strait of Hormuz reopens, but the Iranians don't have control over it and the IRGC gets pretty well dismantled. If that was to all happen in a year's time, would the world owe Trump an apology and say that with hindsight, he showed the courage that no American president has shown in 47 years and he should win awards for it? I mean, is there a set of circumstances where that happens?
So are you asking me if there's a chance that Tucker Carlson will be apologizing for apologizing and then he'll have to support? Yeah, I mean, listen, for the record, let me say, I apologized for supporting Donald Trump and said I regretted it back last summer, and it did not make nearly as much news. So I would like to point that out. I mean,
you support him for like a month,
to this game.
So it's really not that big of a reversal.
It was a good 6 months he had me going there. Yeah, that was about it. But yeah, by the way, I'm embarrassed for the 6 months. I'm quite proud of the time before then, if anything. But no, I will say this. Look, Piers, I mean, if these 7 things that all seem crazy unlikely right now all were to happen, so you got a lot there. We extracted the enriched uranium. We got this strait back open. This regime has fallen, and something not catastrophically worse than it has replaced it, as has been the case in every other regime change in the last 25 years in this region. If all of that happened, Piers, all of it, probably at this point, a year from now, we'd go, wait, how much did the whole thing cost? How many innocent people got killed in the whole thing? And what did we really get out of this? You're saying we took the nuclear threat, which you claimed had been obliterated 6 months before you launched this war, off the table. And honestly, I mean, if at the very minimum at this point right now, Piers, if you got this thing going for another year, you're going to be looking at what? Few $100 billion of a cost. If you added up the cost right now, we might be at a few $100 billion. Our bases destroyed in the region. How many more retaliations from Iran? I mean, look, there's so many questions there, but the bottom line is that where we're at right now, it seems the only way to achieve any of these war goals are this wild bet on intimidating the Iranians into capitulating. But Will already kind of gave and you jumped on it rightfully, Piers. Will gave the whole game away when he said the enemy gets a say too. That's right. So he can predict all this stuff. Like a couple weeks ago, he's saying we're going to have the enriched uranium. Nope, that turns out that deal isn't real because the enemy. Well, okay, but it didn't turn out now. Yeah. Now you're saying maybe they have. Okay, you just said Iran, you'd be surprised if they have a month left. In a month, when this government is still standing, you will move the goalpost to something else. This is what you guys do through all of these wars. They did it for 20 years in Afghanistan. The government that we're building up is doing great.
This is why this whole
I know, that's why I'm saying you can keep it going. I didn't say it's a quagmire. My point is that your bet, listen, I made this point over and over about the 12-day war, and I got ridiculed for it. When I said, look, the reason why that was such a risky thing that we shouldn't have done is because the enemy gets a say too. Exactly your point. Now, in that war, Iran chose to make sure they didn't kill any Americans, make sure that it wasn't something that was going to escalate the war. And I said, wow, we put a lot of faith in this crazy government to do that.
Yeah, you said they had escalation dominance over us, which is insane. They don't. They
killed 7 of our soldiers. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. Our bases are destroyed. We're in a gridlock right now.
We don't get our oil from the Strait of Hormuz. They lost their entire senior leadership class.
What about our friends who do? What about the friends in the region that were completely left behind?
This
the
is
friends are on our side
arrogant
now.
and,
UAE
let me
just
say,
left OPEC. They're going to be aligned with us. You guys are guys are talking points. They're 10 years old.
Let's go. No, they're not. Well, let's go one at a time so we don't just talk over each other. And I'll listen to you too. But listen. I think it's a very arrogant and simplistic view to go, hey, if the Strait of Hormuz has had the lowest level of ships going through it in the last week, to just go, whatever, that's bad for the global economy. That 20% of the oil is like held up. You're like, dude, you do not know how bad this is going to be. Have people go, everyone at home who has a 401k, go look through all those companies that you own. You know how many of them are in foreign countries? Countries in Asia, in Europe are panicking right now over this oil situation. The Gulf states are panicking right now. And Piers, this won't show up in the markets. If you remember, during COVID, during lockdowns, the stock market went to record highs after we were pouring trillions of dollars into the economy. It wasn't for a full another year when the price inflation started destroying Americans left and right. And we have no idea what's coming down the road. We do not know how long we can keep this up before it'll be a cataclysm for the global economy. And you're way too cocky about this, dude. You don't know this will be good for us.
You're way too conservative.
Will Chamberlain.
Oil matters that much.
Will Chamberlain, hang on. Hang on. Let me ask Will a question. We've got a slight delay between me and you guys, so you have to bear with me because I'm about half a second behind you. Will, the reality is this, isn't it? If I presented a set of circumstances to you where Donald Trump comes in for his second term in office, hits the ground spectacularly well, shuts down the southern border, pretty much stops all illegal immigration coming over that border, off to a flying start. Then a few things start to happen. Then a lot of stuff starts to happen. And now here we are a year and a bit afterwards, so nearly 18 months now into his second term. His approval rating is at a record low. He's trapped in a Middle Eastern war of the kind he said he wouldn't get involved with. Cost of living is now increasing again in the United States. And in fact, inflation has not been eradicated. So it was going up anyway, but is now going to be eradicated at a greater rate because of this, enhanced, I should say, inflation because of this. That we're going to see the consequence of, for example, the lack of fertilizer coming through is going to have an obvious effect on the global food market, including in the United States. So yes, it's true the United States is pretty well oil self-sufficient, but there are so many other parts of the world which are absolutely reliant on the Strait of Hormuz being open for gas, for oil, for fertilizer, and so on. The longer this goes on, and the Iranian regime's only objective is to survive, the longer this goes on, the worse it gets for the United States and the global economy. And to anyone who pretends otherwise, and for Donald Trump's approval ratings, and for the Republicans' chances of hanging on to either a half of Congress in November. And I think that the longer this goes on now, we're nearly into May, then June, July, August. I mean, you're into the midterms before you know it. This becomes politically and economically unbelievably damaging for Donald Trump. You must see that. Sorry, Will, I can't hear you. Can you?
Yeah, I think you got muted, Will.
I lost my mic for a second. Sorry.
You seem to have self-muted, which is a new phenomenon.
No, I just randomly hit my cord. I agree with your basic statement. The idea that if this war is still going and nothing has changed in 6 months, and this is the status quo in November, you're right. It will not be good for the midterms. It will not be good for the president. I just think the odds of that are incredibly, incredibly small. Again, the war has only been going on for 2 months. The blockade's been in place for less than 2 weeks, roughly 2 weeks, which is roughly around the time, analysts that I were seeing, around 2 weeks is when the oil storage wells start to fill up. And, again, we're seeing these interesting mixed signals from the Iranian regime. Remember, it was only like a week and a half ago when you brought up that post I made, when Syed Aragchi went on Twitter and said the Straits of Hormuz are open. And then immediately that got swept aside because there's an IRGC counter coup. Like there's a lot has happened in the last 2 months, and it's happened very rapidly. And there's a lot of uncertainty about, especially inside Iran. And so whatever you guys talk about, this is sort of what I meant when I was saying conservatism. It's whatever you guys talk about, we don't know the broader impacts on the whole global economy of 20% bump in oil prices. Like, how can you not see that the effects on Iran of the Strait of Hormuz are much more dramatic when they lose the entirety of their ability to export oil, and it's their entire economy?
Wait, but Will, I think I'm glad you asked that question, because I think this kind of gets at the heart of it, because it's not a question of well, if we're damaging ourselves, but we're damaging them more, therefore that's good. Like we have the military capability to blow up the entire world many times over. But if we were to do that, we wouldn't say, hey, that was a military victory because we blew a bunch of stuff up. The point is that we're no closer to any of the war aims than we were at the beginning. And now we have a whole new problem that we didn't even have back then. And by the way, those problems weren't nearly enough to launch a war of aggression over. The whole thing is madness. And you can sit here and try to spin it however you want to, but the bottom line is that the commander-in-chief who you're supporting here has declared victory, as Buckley put it, multiple times already, declared the thing over, made all types of threats that he's not even following through on, threatening war crimes and terrorism, and then just backing off of that, the whole time lying through his teeth to the American people. The regime has not fallen. It is a war. The Strait is not going to open by itself. And meanwhile, we're no closer to getting their enriched uranium. We're no closer to getting them to stop supporting Hezbollah. In fact, Donald Trump, look, well, yes, it is, dude. In fact, Donald Trump had to even start warning the Israelis to stop because he was so concerned that that was going to blow up this ceasefire and he needed to take a break from the military action. The bottom line here, Piers, as you've covered very well on this show, is that somehow Donald Trump allowed Benjamin Netanyahu to con him into this war, which he has openly been spending my entire life trying to drag my country into, lying through his teeth about how they're weeks away from a nuclear weapon for 40 years. And somehow him and the Mossad chief were able to convince Donald Trump of this ridiculous notion that it was a slam dunk that you could get a regime change through the sky and that the regime
he
would
wasn't
be
convinced
overthrown
of
so
that.
quickly.
You didn't even read the New York Times article. That's just flat out false. Like you're just,
no,
you didn't read it.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did read the article.
Yeah, apparently not, because it made very clear that the Americans did not credit Netanyahu
yes, and he
and
did
Mossad's
it anyway.
statements
And
about
he
regime
did it
change.
anyway.
Yeah, because he thought it was on his own. He wasn't manipulated into this by Netanyahu.
He called for the people to rise up. Listen, I mean, literally, the State Department themselves just admitted we fought this war for the Israelis. This is the most obvious.
Okay,
I just can't even believe you deny this.
I think what is obvious is it came out of Marco Rubio's mouth that was what had happened. He couldn't have been clearer until he
we literally
got
had a
told
whole
that he
debate
had to
about this 3
ferret
weeks ago.
Hey, and then despite the
we did.
We watched the video that I quoted repeatedly.
Let me bring. I want to bring Buckley back in, but I want to just first of all, Buckley. But before I come to you, I just want to ask Dave Smith about something that Mark Levin has said, because the reason I got you three guys on was because you all have a sort of different perspective about about Trump, the MAGA, conservative right, and so on. And Mark Levin's been leading the charge, obviously, for Trump and Iran and so on. And he's just called you out, Dave, personally, along with Tucker. So I'm calling out Tucker Carlson, Dave Smith, Nick Fuentes, and the other podcast reprobates, and drawing a clear line between strong political commentary and what I see as reckless rhetoric. You can be aggressive, you can be passionate, but when commentary fuels distortion, extremism, or confusion, it has real consequences. This is about responsibility in media, accountability in messaging, and protecting the integrity of real debate in America. Just before I go to Buckley, what is your response to Mark Levin?
I mean, Piers, he literally goes off on this whole thing about how, like, hey, you can be pointed, but you got to be responsible about what you say. The video opens with him calling us the woke Reich. The video opens with him calling us Nazis, as he in the same episode, Piers, advocates for tech censorship because we're all a bunch of Nazis. He's calling us woke and saying that our rhetoric is too far. I don't know. Honestly, as somebody who's read a lot of neoconservatives and war hawks over the years, and as someone who clearly is like opposes them politically, and there's been some pretty dumb arguments advanced by neocons before. None of them have ever gone full Mark Levin. He has become a complete clown, like a caricature of himself. If he wants to call out, he starts by going, I'm calling out Dave Smith and Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes. How about, like, come have a conversation with one of us. Let's discuss these issues. The bottom line is that Mark Levin is getting destroyed in the marketplace of ideas. And so now he refuses to debate anyone. Tucker has made the invite to him. He admitted this. Tucker texted him, reached out. Hey, it'd be good to lower the temperature. Why don't we have a real conversation here? We can talk about our disagreements. I've offered many times, but I'm sure Fuentes would too. You know, you want to just sit here and smear people, and then when you're losing the argument, call for censorship. I'm sorry, I'm advocating for free speech and against a war, Piers. That was a lot like the Nazis, right? That makes me a Nazi for not wanting to fight a war of aggression and not wanting censorship. Like, how upside down is this whole world where you could accuse someone else of being a fascist as you support the most fascistic policies that are available to you every opportunity?
Well
yeah, and also
said.
I think, look, with all due respect,